Well, you're going to have to put out a Facebook announcement. You'll be able to get to.
But it's just. I wish I'd lost it because I have it.
Right. You virtually have lost it.
Yeah, it's
But
just frozen
it
in
just
time.
shows you how routinely we use them for everything.
And that was never going to happen to me.
Yeah, right.
Never going to happen to me.
Yeah, right.
But it's just.
It's a tool. It does not control us.
Right.
I actually, on the way down to South Carolina, heard about this woman who had researched medieval's. Well, actually, she started out with the subject of boredom, and then talked about how reliant we have on cell phones for any downtime. She could fill in, and she says there are neurological problems with doing that because you need boredom in order to do certain things. I don't know. Excuse me, Dale.
Let me ask you, we can't have them at any time or the tax cap, say up until about 4 o'clock. Okay. Friday to 8.
Well, I have a whole day of SUNY workshops.
Okay.
Up until 1 o'clock?
Public hearing for 2 things. One is the local law for the tax. And the second is the local law for the tax. And then there's the council. Might then have to shepherd the budget changes through Thursday night next week. And that was
It's like the eclipse. Gotta put it on somebody. Yeah.
As far as I know.
Well, there's all that stuff. I thought if I stayed
I'll pencil that in.
See what I can do.
Okay, thanks, John.
But anyway, then she did research about
Thank you.
trying to train people not to look at their phones.
change this at all.
It's really fascinating.
Oh, hello, Mr. Mark. You did. Yeah. I agree on that.
Most retired.
What's this supposed to mean?
Got a quad
What's this
tan
supposed to
going
mean?
on.
What's that supposed to mean?
We're in this. Oh, well.
I'm sorry. And then we'll make sure that Sylvia announces this
Oh, you started, Becky?
and announces.
Your day off.
Okay.
I'm off.
So we're calling, there's 2 purposes for that special meeting.
Then off all afternoon.
Is that motion to enter executive for this, discussing the lease of real property unless the
Let's call this work session to order, please. The purpose of this work session is to have a more elaborate discussion on the items in the council agenda. The council began at approximately 5:30 today. I think we have some special guests that would like to recognize. And Stan, do you have a few words for us today? Please come forward.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Common Council, and all the members here from the media. And I'm Stanley Ransom of 35 Iowa Street, Plattsburgh, New York. I'm here with my wife, Christina, and with Andrew W. Lauer of Plattsburgh State University Music Department, his wife, Liana, and Andrew's mother, Mrs. Lauer. And we're going to present to you the City of Plattsburgh March and Song. The march is dedicated to the City of Plattsburgh and all the people in it. In 2002, I took a course in music technology from the late Dr. Rick Davies, and as my project, I composed the City of Plattsburgh March. Later on in 2013, I wrote lyrics to the march, promoting the City of Plattsburgh and its history, and performed the song in my role as the Connecticut Peddler. In 2015, I released a CD called Down the Saranac with a dozen songs I'd researched and written about Plattsburgh. You remember the sewage treatment plant? I was not knowledgeable enough to create an arrangement of the march so it could be performed by local bands, but I was fortunate to meet with Andrew W. Lauer, an advanced and brilliant music student, and commissioned him to arrange the score, about 25 pages of music. I thank Andrew for his excellent work. Thanks to events coordinator Sandra Geddes, those scores have been sent to all the bands participating in the Battle of Plattsburgh's parade and beat retreat. So you may hear it on September 9th. In your packet, you'll find the complete band score with a very nice cover designed by Andrew, and it's part of the packet. And a copy of the CD that I had done, a copy of the song lyrics so you can sing along with number 18, the city of Plattsburgh, and other information about the music. CD copies are available from me or Cornerstone Bookshop. Copies of the packet have been given also to the media. And the score is available without charge for any Clinton County schools, nonprofit music organizations. I want this to be used, and I'm not interested in collecting any money. But it looks like we have perhaps time to hear a bit. That's a taste.
Thank you.
So, I'd be happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stan.
And thank you too, Andrew, really appreciate it. We have one other item of business and work session. We'd like to move into an executive session to briefly discuss. Purposes of discussion is a proposed lease and or use of real property, the publicity of which would substantially affect the value thereof. So I have a motion moving to executive session.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Armstrong. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We'll be back in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Good timing on this. Like a motivational. Wow.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for coming. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. Thank you. Good to see you all. Nice to see you all. How are you, Richie? Good. How are you?
He's ready, my cousin. Yeah. Sorry. I want to grab it.
To get him out the open, have to get him out the open flame.
On a 10-cent basket.
You guys understand what could no chance. You didn't say your eyes, I gave you a whole lot. She said, I'll be so tomorrow was the day.
$2 on the way. That's probably because we're one of the actors now.
I can see Kyle was a screamer somewhere. Kyle is our get through something.
Usually has also the preliminary done before it is final. Trying to explain to me what time it is. Trainers, training time,
Some people are just lazy. If they come out, they'll actually.
I'm actually not. 3 days at first camp, and then they say, we stretch, and we go to a point where we say, okay, we don't start, it's done. It's done. We're gonna do it, we're doing this stuff, unless you do something, just actually get them current. Blame on me, she doesn't really know me anymore. She likes blaming on me. We changed from property tax for it. She set up a thousand house meetings. And then, okay. We're trying to do property. Actually, come up with she got something to do with it. I heard from yeah, I'm right up on top of it. I'm just going to supposedly that guy. The city really did back in the I guess is that the only difference really? I'm sorry, it is your turf ball. Call the organizer, which was her. He can be difficult. I can imagine that. He was giving us a barrel. I think so. Just don't train for that. So I push a little further. It's better. There's a lot of you got it. Just don't let them go sometimes. We still have to do what we have to do. So I know it's wrong. Consistency. Yeah. They used to run. I'm sorry to go that way. This is what we got to do. It's like we need markers watching. I go down to Lawrence now. Yeah, that's funny. We didn't see. I didn't think about other power. No, but in central facility, that's so attached to the main.
I just like the sightseeing sometimes. Women, the way they dress.
They were for hire.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Back to the builders.
Oh, yeah, so there's a little alley in the back.
Yeah.
You know, that after 20
That's
my
wife had to negotiate it. But it's funny though, we didn't be out there with unless you weren't paying the bill. Somebody else let us do that too. Everybody's wrong.
Yeah.
We understand that.
She would be just worried about so much money.
Crazy, huh?
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
For the meat,
Yeah,
it's like
that's only that issue with
people rent their houses for the meat, and they grade out
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, that's what somebody else told me. I said, I got friends that live down here, they move out of their house for the month of August. She rent out. And
Hey,
their mortgage to this.
Mortgage for your
Go down to the traffic light?
No, I don't like to do both. Too crowded.
I like the excitement.
Yeah.
She wants it on fire, she wants it on politics.
Pop in for like an hour, just catch the race.
Dave wrote a letter and said, you're not getting any.
It's an experience.
Definitely should be brought to you.
I wanna go to one of those big ones here.
First, we go down, we go down opening, because our family, we have family down there.
Yeah.
And we have a white shirt party. So it's all put together, and we live down 20 of us.
Yes.
How long did they stay away?
And they never.
Oh, you got the.
Then
we got the beer.
Yeah, reserved to the hundred
Well,
tables.
no, the family lives in Clarksville, now, it's 2 or 3 hundred over. So they come in, you get all the tables, we go all together, and put a sign on it.
Yeah.
We're there,
Oh, Kyle worried about it.
every time, it's good. And you can, then we go, I stayed at Racine that night. That's a different world.
You get some news about, Lakeside out there.
So it's a bigger table.
Keep promising.
They should be.
The heavier the kids
Beginning of next week.
Do you have a bigger table that's not too big over there?
I can hold.
Because Joe's.
Cram, maybe probably 50 or 60. We've got lots of spare furniture there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what makes it.
The library has.
Yeah, they're all gonna be there next week.
This is worse out here.
Started on Nelson.
That's a great deal.
You know what, you paid $400. Yeah, I didn't win the NCAA Final Four last year.
There you go. So you're
No,
gonna
you
go
look
look
for-
for.
You get it in the library?
Yeah.
No, you gotta pay non-refundable application fee and send them like $480. That they take, and then if you don't get paid.
But it was a walk. Yeah, I think this year, for that while I was on vacation.
Yeah.
I used to do that for him.
I know you dropped yours.
What are you doing with it?
I know.
That's all I do.
Or all the other hedges are affected. There's another thing over at charging also in the sun. So, yeah,
We're gonna get ourselves some
hang it right in there.
Sorry about that.
Well, I guess
I
Michelle
was
has
just looking at the
higher
post-it note saying, what?
her political career.
Oh my God.
You up the hill, sweet.
Oh, that's true.
You can come in missing, can you? Did you get rid of it?
Yeah, I'll go get some all and I'll sure.
Okay, you ready?
Almost. put it on your agenda. 14.
5 p.m.
Some people just don't read cues.
Regular.
Shortest distance between 2 points. We all go for it.
Yeah, all right.
Ready to go? So returning from executive session, in the executive session we discussed and approved a proposed lease and or use of real property, the publicity of which would substantially affect the value thereof. Any other issues that you'd like to discuss in work session on the agenda?
I have a question about 7B. I read this and it sounds exciting, but I'm just wondering what will be the city's financial obligation should we pass this resolution?
Sure, they would like us to put a 20% match in, which would, for the kiosk they propose, or the panels they propose, will cost the city $600. I propose to use it from the mayor's conference or travel budget, and I simply won't spend that money otherwise, to make sure we stay within the budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This was actually proposed first to Mayor Kasperzak and then I think to Mayor Kelnon. So this has been an ongoing project. They've wanted to work with us. I think I'm certainly willing to pay for it on my budget because I think it's very worthwhile for us to reestablish that relationship with this group. They're very excited about a lot of the things we're trying to do in the downtown with the LRAP projects and other initiatives too. So it was a very nice meeting with them. Any other questions on items from the agenda? We still have a few minutes. Are there any other liaison reports that any councilors would like to bring up at this time?
It's not actually recreation, but it's affiliated. Certainly, I think congratulations are in order for the Plattsburgh Redbirds on their first year here, successfully winning the league championship.
Thank you, and I hope there's many, many more years to come. You know, I encouraged them to have the occasional game underneath the lights as well at Lefty Wilson Field. I think that it would really generate a lot of excitement for that team.
Is there something we could do, maybe a proclamation or something?
I'd like that, and I'd also have invited Eddie Gonzalez, I believe his name is, and his brother, and any team members, and Chris Dory, who was instrumental in bringing them to town, to come and award something to them directly if they could. So we're trying to arrange a date for that, but I think a proclamation would be wonderful. Any other reports? Seeing none, I guess we can start as a call to order the council meeting for tonight. To begin with the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Councilor Armstrong?
Here.
Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Councilor Dowdle?
Here.
Councilor Ensel?
Here.
Councilor Casper?
Here.
Councilor Kretzer?
Here.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on August 24th, 2017 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Casper and second by Councilor Armstrong. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending August 30th, 2017 in the amount of $544,750.03 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Armstrong, seconded by Councilor Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the reports as listed are hereby ordered received and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Ensel, seconded by Councilor Dowdle. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the bills audited by the common council for the week ending September 1st, 2017 in the amount of $817,382.50 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and seconded by Councilor Armstrong. Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to please come and address the council. At this public comment period, we ask you to confine yourself to issues that are currently on the agenda. There will be another public comment period at the end of the meeting for other issues that may concern you as well. So please come forward. Seeing none, can we continue, please?
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the common council approves the city chamberlain to adjust the 2017 budget for the increase in the estimated New York State Retirement 2017 contributions expense affecting all funds.
Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion. Chamberlain Marks, would you like to say a few words on this?
The bill came in higher than the projection. The general fund is a net reduction though, because the police and fire are lower, the employee retirement system is higher. Employee retirement system is 55,000, the police fire reduction was 48, so it's a net increase, but the general fund is a decrease of about 32,000.
And an increase to some of the other funds.
Correct.
Any questions? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor Casper?
Yes.
Councilor Kretzer?
Yes.
Whereas Lakes to Locks passage
I'd
is
like to make a
created.
motion to waive the reading and move the resolution.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer and seconded by Councilor Ensel. Discussion? All in favor of waiving the reading?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion, please. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Dowdle?
Yes.
Councilor Ensel?
Yes.
Councilor Casper?
Yes.
Councilor Kretzer?
Yes.
No travel requests tonight. One resolution for initial consideration that's in front of you. Chief Lawless has been working very diligently on not only revising fees as an ongoing effort for us to look at our fee structure across the city, but we're also anticipating changes in the way we bill and hopefully generating more revenue for the fire department and the general fund in the coming months. Would you like to say a few words or comments for this, Chief Lawless?
It's just that the fees will put us in line with other ambulance services that provide service for the town of Plattsburgh. It'll still be cheaper than they are, but we're up to that level that hasn't been addressed in quite some time.
No, Chief, you said that the rates are online. Do you know off the top of your head what the different rates are currently for 1, 2, and 3, and
For
4?
the city,
Yes.
we don't charge for 1 and 2. It's just ALS straight across, and this is the new way that everybody else is billing. We're at $395 for BLS and $575 for ALS. So it hasn't been addressed in quite some time.
Wow.
And $8 a loaded mile. We will still be quite a bit cheaper. One of them is actually $38 a loaded mile.
Wow.
Yes.
And I think in your analysis with an outside billing consultant, the potential revenue increase could be in the order of about $300,000.
Yes. For
We
the same
haven't-
service we provide.
this is something what perhaps we're reluctant to budget in those increases yet. We want to have an experience with this to see just how successful this program is, but certainly seems like something that as time has come, it's worth exploring. I think we also talked about you didn't feel you'd be put at any competitive disadvantage by charging these sorts of fees, that you'd be the first responder in much of your market regardless.
Right.
I'd like to make a motion to implement Rule 4.
I did catch, sorry to interrupt, I did catch one minor typo. It's in the second sentence. It should actually be chapter 132, not section 132.
Okay.
So given that change.
Chapter instead of section.
So we have a motion to invoke Rule 4 and vote on tonight, second by Councilor Armstrong. Any further
Thank you.
discussion?
Thank you for that work.
Good work.
Really appreciate it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Thank you for your research.
Well, I'm sorry, when will those rates take effect?
Effective as soon as practical.
Right.
It has
Do a
to be,
roll call?
you just invoke Rule 4. I don't know if you have to-
Vote on the resolution.
Okay.
Okay, so we've invoked Rule 4, so let's vote on the actual motion
First.
or resolution. All in favor?
No,
Aye.
I need first and
And
second.
you need a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Roll call.
Again, so be Councilor Ansel and Councilor Armstrong, first and second.
And roll.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Insel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, when will those take effect now? Immediately, or?
Almost immediately.
We'll start tomorrow.
Wow.
Thank you.
And can I also ask, how, especially in number 4, how will the users become aware of this? Is it the users?
The users, they're billed now, when you do Medicaid, Medicare,
Right.
which is 73% of our payer mix, that's what they pay us. This is more for the commercial insurances that they will pay the full rate.
Right. Do you anticipate this having any impact on usage?
No,
No? Okay.
What mix of your total usage is Medicaid, Medicare, where's the negotiated rate?
73%, and that's the area that. So the billing company already has all the demographics, and we ran some initial payer options, and we came up with substantial numbers.
And I imagine we'll hear more about your idea for the billing agent when we discuss the budget later.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you. Any new business or council reports? At this time, I'd like to announce that we'll have a hearing for local law P6 2017. We'll set the hearing for Thursday, September 14th, 2017 at 5 p.m.
You need to formally introduce it.
And you have a copy of the proposed local law P6, the year 2017 council override of the tax cap. That's given to you on your desk. At that time, we will also have a hearing on presumably your council budget amendments. Any other new business or council reports?
We will have a budget hearing immediately following this meeting.
So we invite the public to certainly attend that, and we're going to hear from some department heads at that time as well. Seeing no other reports, are there any members of the public who would like to come and please address the council on any issue that concerns you and the council?
I wanted to commend the council in taking a 15% pay rate reduction. I really appreciate that. I don't know, I'm going to speak about the budget a little bit, so I don't know if some of the numbers I'm going to say might have already been revised. I emailed Mike Kelly. I couldn't attend. This is the busiest time for me, and so even attending this is difficult. I want to propose that the mayor and the council consider some additional reductions. And I didn't spend a lot of time, looked through the budget from last week. And one of the concerns I had, which obviously I think all residents are concerned about, is that it looks like the real property tax is what we collect, the revenue. Looks like we're going to have an additional projection of $11,748,000, which is pretty much where it is now. It looks like the actual and the projected are the same. Hopefully it's not going to increase, but I asked, I know that this has been an ongoing issue, and I spoke to the mayor briefly about you're trying to do something to prevent further large landowners from getting additional reduction in assessments, which has a direct relationship in the property tax that we collect. I know it's not a question and answer, but maybe at a future council meeting, you could talk to the public about what's being done with that. And am I correct in looking at this figure and saying that that is what is projected to be the reduction in actual collected?
The increase is 1.84% based on expanded tax roll, having to do with new properties that have come online that weren't on the previous tax roll. That's correct.
Right. I think what you're saying is that there's a couple projects that are looking at being built, multifamily.
Or have already been built. There's more projects to be built that hopefully can add to the tax roll next year as well.
Right. So this figure here doesn't include those taxes that we're looking to collect. Correct. Because we haven't collected them yet. The other point is that, again, I'm sorry because Mr. Kelly must have met with other people and maybe they've already addressed these, but I asked that the mayor consider reduction in his salary. I noticed that when we look at the projection right now, the actual, so we're only in September, is $84,228. And that I'm assuming that the projection for 2017 is based on the rest of the months of 2017. And so at the end of 2017, you will have received a salary of $132,004.
No, I think the salary is somewhere around $77,000. You may be looking at the entire mayor's budget, including.
Okay, so the regular pay, I'm looking at for the actual is $73,466.65, and the projection is an increase of 36% to $118,707.
No, there's no increase in the mayor's salary.
Okay, I'm looking at what was received last week, so maybe there's some change, but in this that I'm looking at that I received last week, it says that the actual is $73,466.65, and that the projection for 2017 is $118,704, and that for 2018 it looks like there's a 35.9% increase to $161,335.
No, we've discussed that at previous budget hearings. That has to do with the DRI assistant, and his salary is actually being reimbursed by the state.
Okay, so maybe I'll speak to Mike Kelly about that at a later date because it's under regular pay. So I still ask the mayor.
It's regular pay, it's just not regular pay to the mayor.
Okay, it's under the mayor, so I apologize if it's in
Mayor's office, think of it that way.
Okay, so maybe on the other note, the original note, maybe the mayor would consider a salary reduction in line with the council. I think that would help the city. On the corporate council, I know that we're expected to have some increased litigation. I asked that because of the budget constraints and the financial situation of the city, that the mayor work with the corporate council to consider a cap at the salary. It's projected that there's going to be a 24% increase, and you spoke to that briefly last week. It's currently at, that this includes just a regular pay is $37,000 right now. for projection for 2017 is almost 59,000. And so maybe we could work on something where we consider a cap.
Again, there's no raises. I don't think we're anticipating raises anywhere within the city in any capacity. You asked about whether we'd be more aggressive in defending Title VII real property assessments. And part of that requires us to also put more in the budget for outside consulting and legal work to do that. So I think you may be looking at that as an explanation.
Okay, I'm looking under corporate counsel where it says regular pay. So you're saying that that line item also includes contracting with other legal counsel?
Rich?
No, that's the basic pay for corporation counsel. The increase in the budget contract services will increase it from 60,000 to 120,000 because of the outside legal costs that we're going to incur for additional litigation.
Right, so I'm talking about two different things. The first one is the legal counsel, which is actually not looking at an, increase.
I can assure you that we're not planning to raise salaries for any employees beyond that contract. So I think you're seeing within the numbers unanticipated salary increases that don't exist.
Okay, I mean, I see it here. I'll talk to Mr. Kelly about that, but the contracted services, maybe you can budget. So I'll move quickly because you're giving me the time.
Why don't you bring those up during budget hearings? Because they're all budget items and we're having a budget hearing right after this.
Okay, and there'll be time to talk about, okay, all right.
Thank you. Any other individuals like to address the council? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Councilor Armstrong, seconded by Councilor Dowdle. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor Casper?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
So this time I'll turn the meeting over to Councilor Kelly for our budget hearing.
I didn't bring my copy.
Would you like to take a 5-minute break before we go right into it? Okay.
We didn't need a new copy because of last week. I didn't bring, because I thought we were getting a new copy, so.
I'll be happy to share
All right.
what I have.
And then you could point, and that will be even better. We'll go, this is where we are. That's what I need.
Last week we made it up to and almost through the police department budget. I'm glad you're here, Chief, because we did have a couple questions for you.
Mike, can I ask a question?
Yes.
I don't know if you addressed it, but a couple of weeks ago, and since Carol brought it up, the question of reducing counselor salaries?
Yeah.
Did we pass that by?
We have not passed that resolution, Vic.
Okay.
It's still up for discussion.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, Chief, we have items 4432, 4433, and 4434. That is IT Con LBR. We don't know what that is, and IT hard and software, I think. And then IT vehicle expenses. Just wanted some clarification on those, and one in particular there is going up 112%. We just wanted to, what that's all about.
Without the numbers in front of me.
Would you like to come look at this copy? You certainly may.
I apologize,
That's okay.
I was told
I meant-
our budget hearing was gonna be.
I meant to email you these questions before the meeting, and I didn't get around to it. That one's ready.
I believe one of these, the
IT hardware with a firewall that was required, that we're gonna need. That was gonna be a big purchase. The additional, that was the 112% increase. Just something we can't live without, essentially.
Okay.
That would be that one.
Okay.
Vehicle expenses is the technology required for the patrol cars.
Does that mean when we get a new patrol car, it has to be outfitted with the right equipment?
Isn't that, is that asset seizure money
Good
though?
asset. Good asset.
The technology?
No.
I thought that there was
For the cars.
equipment.
Could we use it from asset seizure money? I know it's not traditional, but given the
Well,
dire
we can't cut
straits.
the budget and supplement with asset
That's right.
seizure.
You
That's
can't-
right,
You can't fix the budget with the.
So for
assets.
next
Read
year
that.
though,
I thought that the vehicle.
We could
It's above and
reassign.
beyond.
Oh, right.
So the question would be to reassign so that you don't wind up cutting your budget and just account for it differently. Is that okay?
Make some attempt that you would like in the budget, and I would have to determine whether I really required something that was cut and could use other monies for that.
Okay.
But hasn't there been the case that,
I believe in the
there's
past, we
a,
have used some
but there's
asset
a-
money for,
but there's a magnifying glass on that
yes.
because of manipulation,
We get
you know?
Yeah.
Go ahead and cut the budget and then force the asset seizure money.
Yeah.
But while you're up here, I was just gonna, oh, I'm sorry, did you not have a chance yet?
That's it for
I'm
me.
sorry, okay. Looking at the vehicle purchase, I know that we've, in the past, kind of asked questions about this, and sorry to be repetitive, but wondering if you could supply or organize with your, what do you call it? The person who does all of the inventory and that person, you know, a way of us to get a window into your evaluation about vehicle replacement and what criteria is used. I think I probably asked the same kinds of questions regarding the purchase of the fire truck last year, but, you know, to have some kind of standardized means by which we can see what you see regarding, you know, the replacement. And I just want to make a couple of suggestions. Is it possible for you to demonstrate that to us now for the purchase of these two, just so we can understand it better? And then also, I think I recall there being discussion in the past about whether there's really a need for the SUV type, which is going to be, of course, more costly. I know we used to have sedans. I think they're less. So to consider, you know, what about an economy car? I don't know. Maybe we talked about this before, but I know that there are certain other fleets and other municipalities that are the economy or even fuel efficient somehow. So
They probably have to have strong enough engine to be able to pursue if needed.
And suspensions.
And
The
suspensions.
biggest issue we run into is being able to, once we put a cage in there, actually having room to put a prisoner in the back.
Okay.
We do a lot of prisoner transport, so we need the extra room.
Right.
Also, the room in the back allows us to carry all of our equipment that we need, from fire extinguishers to breaching tools when we need to.
That wouldn't fit
medical
into the
emergency.
trunk of a
Well,
sedan.
I'm not saying it wouldn't fit, it gives us a lot more options back there to mount stuff.
Yeah.
It's not confined to a trunk, so.
Right.
We carry sharps containers, we carry.
Well, I'm just thinking about, you know, just for the purpose of kind of debate and thinking about how to be more economical, we did have a police fleet for years and years that did not have one SUV.
That was back when they were the full-size Crown Victorias,
Uh-huh.
full-size cars, which still had room in the back seat.
Mhm.
Most of these that we've looked at, once you install a cage, you have maybe this much, you know, footwell
The
room.
current
You can't
sedans.
really cram a person in there, you
Right.
know, comfortably.
Okay.
Not that it needs to be comfortable, but it needs to be manageable.
That's true.
Different size
You need to be
people.
able to get them in. All right.
So that's our biggest reason.
All right.
All-wheel drive, it goes through the snowstorms, they're very, and the cost isn't, I believe, all that much
No.
more than the.
If you think about
vehicles, yeah.
the size of the sedan you would need.
And also,
Okay.
is the interior, like the seating, considered more durable than an SUV?
Yeah, it's,
I mean, if somebody's gotta sit there, because
Right.
somebody gets out and somebody gets in, I mean, it's
Right.
24 hours a day,
yeah, yeah.
24/7.
the
Okay.
issues, it is more durable. So.
And I'm wondering what the cost difference was between,
I wanted to say
Probably.
$4,000. I don't quote me, but I believe it's around $4,000.
Well, 4,000.
per
I mean,
vehicle.
I think that's significant.
Oh, it's certainly
Yeah.
significant.
All right, so let me, first of all, just reiterate that I would like some kind of more complete analysis of, that demonstrates the need for the two vehicles. You know, maybe we can get away with one, who knows? And then, you know, maybe it would be worthwhile to compare whether or not we can get away with a different model. Is that,
Yeah.
is
Well,
that?
like I said, we've done.
I mean, do I have support on the
we've
council
looked
for
at
that
all the different
question?
models and like that, at the same time, we run into putting computers, all the technology we need in the car, if there's space to actually fit 2 people in the front of the car, once we do that, and then being able to transport someone.
So
in the
that
back.
you've already analyzed?
The sedans used to be much larger.
Yeah, they were, they're
Okay.
really compact now, so you put the computer in the front seat and it takes up the passenger side, and you can't put two officers in the vehicle either.
Thank
And what becomes of a vehicle when it's retired? Or
We either
replaced?
try and repurpose it, sometimes other departments in the city repurpose it for our own uses, for like an unmarked, if it was marked, we'll de-stripe it, or we try and auction it.
Okay, so is there thought of resale with an SUV versus a sedan?
Yeah, they definitely retain their value a little better.
Okay, and are the SUVs 8-cylinder?
No, they're 6.
6, so a car would be 6, okay.
And they don't have all-wheel drive?
They do, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
But, I mean, maybe I should just ask my colleagues, are you on board with the idea that we get more information to support whether or not 2 vehicles are needed, or am I the lone voice here?
No, are you asking about the 2 or the type?
The 2.
2
You
vehicles.
convinced me of the need for the
Okay.
SUV.
Well,
Okay.
we have an aging fleet, kind of our benchmark is 100,000 miles for our marked units. We see the repair costs go up exponentially after that, and maybe Richard could add to this, but the insurance companies, they use that as a benchmark, 100,000 miles, for, they want to know how many miles, how many of our cars have over 100,000 miles, that's kind of their benchmark for.
What's the average lifespan with only 100,000 miles with the amount of
About
use that
3
those
years,
vehicles get?
About 3 years out of a car. Yeah. And then a lot of these are 2013s that we have, so we're getting up there.
It's too bad we can't lease them.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Right.
So if the council suggested to purchase one car for a few years, given the financial situation of the general fund, would you be able to augment from your own asset seizure money any other additional transportation or communications needs?
That would be up to, I can't say that if you.
You can't recommend that.
Yeah.
Right.
But it wouldn't be illegal, would it?
No.
To purchase a vehicle with asset money? Is that the question?
I'm saying if you all just endorse the purchase of one car in this interim for a few years,
And explore the
could second
possibility.
cars be purchased outside of the budget with asset seizure money?
I feel that we've been cautioned for 3 years
Mm-hmm.
that that is a manipulation of asset seizure money, and maybe I'm wrong, but.
No, they use that pretty much as their example in the guide too.
Yeah,
Asset
I don't want to
seizure.
get in trouble for
Yeah.
that, and then suddenly have to pony up money that we didn't expect.
So if other municipalities are doing it, they do it till they're caught, or?
I can't speak for other municipalities
okay.
now, they.
You know, and here we are on YouTube right now.
Yeah, well, right, but we hear other municipalities do it.
That may be.
Okay.
What would happen if we only funded one car next year?
Well, then we'd have to figure out how to make do with that one car, and. if
Could you
we-
do that?
If we felt there was a need to.
Could you do that, Chief? You'd find a way?
Yeah, find a way.
That's legal?
That's legal, right.
Don't want our chief to go to
Why
jail.
was
Instead of legal, permitted. Let's use the word permitted instead
Okay.
of legal.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Well, I'm gonna recommend that we do cut that number in half, one police car next year, giving our dire financial situation, and then we can certainly revisit that in future years.
So that would reduce the IT vehicle expense?
And the other one, yeah. It seems like it, wouldn't it, Chief? Yeah.
Cut those in half, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was my understanding that when you take a vehicle off the road, you move the electronics from that vehicle to the new vehicle, so why?
Depending on how old the electronics are, there comes an end of life for some of them, and that's kind of what we've come up to lately, so. But whatever we can reuse, we will.
Is that done in-house, the actual removal and
No, it's not.
transfer? Okay.
Okay, anything else for the chief? All right. Any questions about asset seizure? School crossing guards?
I've got a question about crossing guards. Could crossing guards be employed, for instance, for the upcoming walk from downtown to campus rather than incurring the expense of overtime?
You mean
Like for marches, like,
Mhm.
for example, the march that we approved a week or
Last
two
week.
ago.
But I think,
Could crossing guards be used rather than have officers brought in on overtime?
or do they collect unemployment during the off months?
I don't believe they collect unemployment.
No,
We've
but
never
you-
used them for anything other than traffic control in the past. I mean, they're operating at, intersections with crosswalks and just going out there with their signs. It's a little different than actually, directing traffic, so to speak. They're just there for.
Would they, in essence though, would they still not be kind of controlling traffic or traffic control if they were out in their vests with the sign stop and so
Yeah,
on?
because it is on the sidewalks now, right? That's what we
Right.
voted on.
Right.
I believe if it's on the sidewalks, we're probably able to not require any overtime. If they stay on the sidewalks, normally we can do that off shift. It's pretty limited, just we're stopping at intersections while they cross.
Talking about a $200 cost for overtime for that event, so, yeah.
But, I mean, if not just this specific
But in general.
parade, but down the, or march, I should say, but down the road, something that we may,
I think you would have to look at the job description.
Job description would be.
Mhm.
It's one thing being responsible for children crossing the road with traffic, and another to be responsible for adults who have.
Many adults.
I mean, it may specifically,
Right,
it may
right.
specifically say school crossing too.
Right.
Yeah.
It may,
Right.
yeah.
Can I actually back up to the other asset seizure? This actually isn't a budget question so much, but it's been on my mind since the current administration's loosening of accessibility of police departments to more tactical weapons that were actually not permitted under the previous administration, including grenade launchers and so forth. So I just wanted to ask you, I'm sure there are departments that want all the things that they can get, but I wanted to ask you about your attitude in terms of what is available and what should not be received or asked for.
Are you talking about military equipment?
Military, yeah. I think there were 3 categories that are now loosened up for police departments to have access to military-type equipment. So I just wanted to know what your feeling was about that. And in essence, I guess, to be quite honest, I'm asking if you would ever seek out acquisition of such material.
I wouldn't rule out anything that I felt could serve the public and the officers better protect them. That would be my only.
Okay, fair enough.
Thanks for asking that, though.
Okay. Traffic lights is the next item. Only one item there, and it's the same as it was last year, so I imagine you have a lot of questions about it, but. Next is fire. Chief Lawless, would you come up and tell us about your plans for ambulances?
So we had, several things have transpired. Our billing clerk, who was taking care of all the EMS billing, has since retired. We were able to bring her back at 20 hours a week, but she's going to do more administrative than she is the billing. There's no way she could complete that. What was happening was she was also getting overwhelmed with the amount of calls and trying to do second and third letters out to people that weren't paying. So we're looking at contracting out with a third-party biller, which all the other EMS agencies use. They're based on revenue, and they get a cut of that revenue. Right now, we're looking at about 9%, which isn't, some of them, they give you a specific amount per call. We don't want that. We want something that you generate the revenue, and then we'll do that, instead of me paying you outright for just doing the work. They're driven with that too. So they're going to be, what I've been told is that we're going to have 5 people working on each PCR, pre-care, patient care report, pre-hospital care, so that they will always have follow-up. And we can set the parameters, how many letters they get, and it goes all the way through up to collections. They don't do collections, but they can put us in touch with collections if we need to go to that route. So that being said, we're going to have, if you look at the 1100 account, there's going to be a reduction of $30,000 in that due to her going to part-time.
Okay.
And a reduction in benefits as well.
Right. Yeah, but at this point, she doesn't get benefits.
Because she's part-time?
Because she's part-time.
Okay. Good.
What would happen, say, somebody retires, goes part-time, decides, no, I really want to retire and leaves? Then what would you do?
Beg.
Okay.
I'd beg her not to do it, but
or
we've actually
come back.
We've worked on it with. I've actually had that. I need a succession plan. If she decides to go somewhere else, and move on, to give me some time so that we can work somebody in, because there's a lot of knowledge that comes to it. She's still going to work on some of the billing to make sure that the paperwork is correct and sent out properly to the billing company.
Now, I know I've been there, and you've had experiences of people coming in to pay.
Yes.
In person.
Right.
In cash, whatever.
Right. We're going to discontinue that, and we're going to do there. It's all going to be. They're going to collect all the money, and they're going to do it as an electronic transfer for us.
So that will not be available any longer.
That will be, that I'm aware of right now. We can still talk to the billing company. Maybe there's a way to make it a little easier. We only have 3 or 4 people that do that on a regular basis.
Okay.
And revenue, you anticipate an additional $300,000?
That's when we were working on all the different aspects of this. That's what we're coming up with, 300,000. That's what we're shooting.
With the rate increases too.
With the rate increases, with the third-party biller, who's going to be sending multiple bills and doing follow-ups. And we're also working, if you look at the contracted services, you're going to see an increase in contracted services.
Right, and that's what that's for, right?
The contracted services is not for that.
No?
We have a medical director. We work underneath a doctor's license. The medical director that we have now is not very active in our department. We have an emergency room doctor at CVPH who used to be a Portland, Maine firefighter. And she wants to come on as our medical director. She's very progressive, very aggressive with getting our guys higher trained than they actually are now. She's going to come in-house, do it in the station, and work on that level. So that should raise our level of care even more.
So that's going to cost us an additional
$6,000. Then we have, what the other part is you're going to see in time, we're going to be going to the same scheduling and payroll submission that police is using. So we're getting on with them. We're actually, because we're going underneath them, we're going to see approximately $2,000 increase or decrease in what it would cost us if we did it on our own. Okay. So we're working with them. I did, for the contracted services for that increase, you'll see that I decreased from all the others. So what I did, I took money out to make up for what our increase in contracted services were.
This
So-
is an employee time card?
It's gonna be not, yes, it's sort of a time card, we're working on that aspect, but it allows, it's better tracking of time and scheduling, and it takes a lot off the administrative plate.
In the state's report to us, the comprehensive review that they did, they recommended that we examine ways to automate timekeeping.
That's what we're doing.
That's great. Good to know.
So we're on with that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chief Lawless today?
I'm just gonna ask the 100% reduction in 4340.
4340 for the buildings and grounds?
Grounds, right.
That was a typo, but I've worked with Richard, and I think I can make it up in other areas and transfer some funds when to get there. That was supposed to state at 12,000.
Okay.
But since it's in there and the budget's in, I guess I'm gonna have to make up 12,000 from somewhere else.
That's a spirit. Thank you.
Let's hear it for typos. Okay.
Make a motion for more typos.
Okay. Yeah, that was it for.
Now, I don't know, in this budget, did you book the $300,000
No.
additional money?
No.
I think that's a smart thing to do because you don't really know at this
Right,
point.
and you would see that in the general fund revenue. It's under, I believe, is it healthcare, Richard? Is that what it goes on? It'll be in the beginning.
But you did book some revenue.
I booked our normal revenue.
Normal.
I didn't,
Okay.
this was, in July, this was all starting to work, and I didn't want to present it to you without having all the information
Right.
and having everything lined up.
I think that's a safe thing to do, and then we can enjoy the windfall that comes from when
Right.
it actually happens.
Well, and there's a question, because, we've
Yeah.
talked about, quite a bit about not
Speculation.
not building in possibles. So if the possibles become more probable and the probable becomes actual, what in fact is done with the windfall? With all of these massive cuts that we've done, does it just get put in the general fund and then we all, clap hands that we have a great big general fund? Or do we address some of the massive cuts that we've made to, obviously that would require some analysis of where there might be shortcomings in the budget and where we might need to be building up some of the services. But I think if we're gonna say we're not gonna build in the revenue that's possible, then we should have a plan of action if in fact it becomes actual.
Budget revisions can happen at any of our meetings at any time during the year. So if there's an opportunity to restore funding for something we believe is serious enough to do that, then of course we can do that. My preference would be to see a larger fund balance and a smaller tax increase next year. But there's certainly times when we need to look at things. I think of the city of Houston. I hope to God they have a fund balance, a big one, a really big one. And if something like that were to happen here, what would we do?
Well,
We'd be at the mercy of somebody else is what would happen.
Well, and we have been, and so was Vermont. When you get to that catastrophic level, then
You've got
yes,
FEMA, hopefully.
The larger community we're all responsible. Sorry, not to derail the question, but
The more money
Goes
you,
along with public safety.
yes, it does.
the more money you have at a time like that, the better off you are, of course. So,
Recall also that in your 5-year budget, you anticipated large cuts next year potentially too, which hopefully could be offset or avoided by some revenue we may realize here. So I'm pretty sure that any unanticipated revenue that we can discover from this will be very well appreciated next year's round of budget considerations as well.
okay. Any other questions?
4440, fee service. Page 10, top line.
4440.
240% increase.
Right. Projections 225, and we're going into 18 at a $60,000 increase. If I've heard the explanation, I'm sorry, I just would need to hear it again.
Additional litigation costs to pay.
Okay.
We added 60 here and 60 corporation counsel.
Okay.
So it's a potential expense. Okay.
Bless you.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Okay. Next is Animal Control Officer. I think that falls under your jurisdiction, doesn't it, Chief Parkinson? You may not have to come up here.
No, to anticipate.
Any questions about Animal Control Officer?
That's an on-call, or basically per diem on-call type.
No, it's not per diem, it's a salary.
Right. So it's not net and ended.
Well, when we need him, we call him up, but he has a salary.
But it's, okay, it's not per diem per se.
No. If I can be refreshed on some of the concerns there were about people calling and getting upcharged or being talked into upcharging because I can't do this right now, but I'll do it for you on my own private business. Can we, I know, I believe you responded to that, but could you clarify again what the conclusion of that was? And maybe Dean replied on that too.
I think Dean replied.
I talked to Jim Burgess, and we also spoke with the complainant in that matter. I think it was a little bit of a misinterpretation.
Okay.
Some of the stuff that complainant was alleging that he was gonna have someone do or do himself. Jim Burgess just warned him that you need to be a licensed trapper to be doing some of this stuff, so don't get yourself in trouble or your friend that is gonna come do this, without the proper licensing. And he mentioned that he has these licenses and he does this for a fee. He wasn't so much saying in the conversation I got that he was offering to do it, but I think there was some misinterpretation there.
Because I had a similar complaint from a constituent earlier that they had a similar.
I thought you did too, Mike.
I did, but I retracted. He's been to my house a half dozen times now because my wife has taken up the hobby of trapping animals, and she's really into it. And each and every time
She's got to stop watching those Alaska shows.
Each and every time he comes, he's very professional, and he has made no further mention of doing any additional work for us. In fact, I think he doesn't want to come to my house anymore because he's being overworked by my wife. So
he has said that he has no intention of even mentioning charging someone for anything.
Okay, that's great to know. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there ever a time, and I would ask maybe Richard, I know that dog control became an issue with shared services with the county. And I think there was another municipality, because they had a dog control officer after 7 years, he actually became part of the town. They owed him retirement. Would that ever happen with this?
And with dog
I know
control?
it's not, I know we don't do dog control, but it's of a similar nature. It's a contracted service. It's an annual renewal. Would that item ever?
We do partly dog control, and the county's willing to provide a dog control unit for the entire county. If we go along with that, they expect maybe it will save a few $1,000s. So it's part of the shared services discussion.
That we could save? And where would that savings come from? This item or from the police?
Well, animal control's got two dimensions. One is dog control and one is all other animals.
Yeah.
So it'd be on.
We pay Elmore SPCA because we have to have a place to bring animals we see, so there's a cost associated with that. We are the dog control officer essentially in the city of Plattsburgh. The patrol lieutenant is designated as the animal control, dog control officer. Officers go out when we receive a complaint and pick up the dog if need be, and if we can't locate the owner, bring it to Elmore's.
And I don't know if this is connected, but when you respond to a nuisance animal, whether it's barking or something, do you check to see if the dog's licensed?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
The inquiry is made?
Before we-
Okay.
If we can locate the owner, we make them prove that it's licensed. Yes.
Okay.
And
And I'm
if not,
thinking,
we give them a week to come down and register.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, building inspector. Joe? We'll put you on the spot, Joe.
Sure.
I see a lot of minuses though, Joe, and that's good.
Really, I did the best I could here. I know it only shows a 1% decrease, but if you recall, at the very beginning of the year, the first couple of weeks in January, we were asked to reduce some from our budget, and I found 6,700. So I reduced that there, and then I found another 5,000 just now when I did my budget. It was offset slightly because of some pay increases from AFSCME and that kind of stuff. But so with every line item, I did a 6-year average. I looked back at actuals. I threw out the anomalies if something wasn't right, and I got the numbers down as low as I think I could, still function efficiently.
Thank you.
Are there any anticipated training expenses?
Our training expenses actually should go down. Once Jim is fully trained at the end of this year, then we can all take the same course in Lake Placid, and so the expense should go down.
Okay, at the end of 2017.
Actually, yes, that's a good point. So we found cheaper Jim's going to take his last 3 courses in Malone, which is going to save. We had budgeted for him to go to Albany, which would have required him to spend the night.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to save some money in training coming down the end of 17.
Joe, I'm looking at your,
no, I'm done.
Looking at your 2017 actuals on 4431 for printing and copying, and it looks like you're just about at your budget for this year with.
Yeah, that's the one thing, and right, it's every.
And you haven't asked for an increase.
Every couple of $100. It turns out that we were charging something to that account that we shouldn't have, that we can charge to office supplies. So I think we're going to be fine the rest of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Joe? Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your time.
Sure.
Bingo inspector.
Is that something that could be, is that something that could be merged with the county? Because doesn't the county have a county bingo inspector? Couldn't that be shared?
I could ask.
What does a bingo inspector do anyway?
It's required by state law.
Cheating.
Yeah.
That's what I figured. That's why it's in the budget.
But I thought, I'm pretty sure there's a county bingo inspector.
I'll look into that.
So anytime a church has bingo, someone has to come inspect the premises, or?
Check the
Right.
The machinery.
I mean, same thing with,
It's like
I
Las
believe,
Vegas.
same thing with like Queen of Hearts and pull tabs and things like that.
Oh, okay. Any kind of fundraising.
Mhm.
Who is our bingo inspector?
Sylvia would know.
Bingo the clown.
I thought that was his name. Bingo inspector.
Who?
Sounds right, Gerard.
Wayne Gerard. Okay.
Well, we have a name.
Okay. Mr. Brody?
Yes, sir.
Is that?
Mayor, Council.
How are you, Michael?
Good, how are you?
Very good.
If you start and get your budget sheets out, look at them as we go, you'll see that we reduced everything in the line items under, let's start with street administration. And if you go down the street, on page 11, you'll see we reduced that by 18%. We moved bodies, took a mechanic out of there. You go to street maintenance, we reduced that by 9%, almost 10. snow and ice, 2 point, you know, we had to go up a little bit, fuel costs and ice, or salt and sand, we have to, you know, adjust that.
How did we do with any leftover?
We have it.
Currently, we've got 300 ton at DOT on South Peru and 600 ton in our Norco facility.
And how much do you need for?
We average
Depends upon
about
how the weather.
2,500 ton total for the season is what we try to carry. We carried over more the previous year. We budgeted for 1,400 ton. This year we have to 1,600
ton.
When we had to get on with the county contract.
Okay.
So we're.
In the general fund, overall, our budget's been reduced.
Yes, you can't argue with that.
Okay. We do have another issue in the water and sewer that we have to correct, and Rich and I have been working on that, where we took money out of line items. It should have been out of other line items, but when we get to that, I'll explain that to you. We just got to adjust it. We're still decreasing it, but we got to decrease the right line item.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Broden?
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, is this where you're gonna have?
Moving right along.
Oh, I do have a question, sorry. On street maintenance, Mike, on 4430, there was a projection of 114, and you're down to 91,000 for next year. It's a decrease of 20. We had an actual of, you will look at the 16.
Street maintenance.
So it seems we always have a higher number budgeted, but we actual have a lower result.
Oh, sorry, Dale, which line is
I'm
that?
on
4330.
4430.
That's for contracted
On 11,
services.
right.
Oh.
And I mean, it's down, I'm not, that's just asking what.
4430?
You got line
Forty-four.
striping and we have maintenance to the marina boat.
Okay.
That we service with. So those two line items went down a net of 23,000.
Okay.
Okay, because the actual was 85,000 at mid-August with a projection of 114,000. Now it's down to 91 for the mayor's budget. So it's down 20%?
Well,
We have items that we have not, you know, for instance, you have tires in there, you get $1,200 for tires, you got a crack ceiling budget that wasn't carried forward, and those came out of the engineering department, did put a crack ceiling budget of 5,000. Miscellaneous paving.
Bank striping, we reduced by $20,000. Went from 100,000 to 80,000.
Okay.
The 2016 striping was really economical because we used the county to do it.
Yes.
That's why that's such a low number back in 2016, 71,411.
Right.
Typically, they budget a lot of funds for striping that they're given from engineering, and they don't normally use as much striping as is budgeted.
We have a line item in our budget, but we don't control how it's spent.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that a
16.
candidate for shared services, line striping?
Looks like it was in 16. The
Yeah,
county did?
There's two types of line striping. The one Rich alludes to is when you're talking about center line striping, and the county's tools are for latex striping.
Mhm.
The crosswalks, all this stuff you see downtown, that is epoxy paint. Those are very specialized tools. There's actually one contractor, but one does airports, and there's another one that does roads. And that one's, you're kind of stuck on it. Is it straight line?
Yeah, straight line.
Straight line. There's two of them, but that's, unfortunately, you're locked into it, because the tools are extremely expensive for that kind of epoxy paint, but it's very durable.
Okay, next is community development.
Well, Paul couldn't be here tonight,
Right.
and there is a major proposal regarding how to reassign the events coordinator, and I would like to convene to discuss that next week, if you don't mind.
Is that acceptable to everyone on the council? Okay. We will mark that for 8, I'm sorry, 9, 8? Yeah.
9/7.
7, sorry. 9/7. Okay. Thank you. System administration, IT. And I think Mr. Ruff was gonna talk to us about his plans for that area.
The mayor had mentioned last week about the formation of an infrastructure division. I don't know what you see, this is kind of how it looks on paper.
I really think the color needs to go.
Yeah. She's razzing you, John.
I printed it in black and white and I used crayons too.
Oh, okay. Got a lot of time on his hands.
He's not kidding about the crayons. He gave me his budget numbers in gray crayon. I could barely read it.
Okay.
That was more shot at Rich.
I know. I remember.
So the proposal was to incorporate IT into the infrastructure division. IT is infrastructure in the city, and we used to say that water's the backbone of communities. Well, it still is, but IT is really becoming more the backbone of communities. And especially when it comes to our water and wastewater service, we really need IT support that we can direct and control that's in-house. So I've been talking with the mayor about how we could approach kind of coming up with a modified proposal for providing IT services that don't rely as heavily on the general fund. So what we came up with was making it part of the infrastructure division, administering it that way so we can facilitate collaboration and making sure the priorities are aligned with the mayor and council's objectives so that we can get maximum benefit out of it. So what I did with this sheet is kind of outline the goals we were trying to accomplish with this restructuring, and also detail the partitioning of costs so that they really more equitably represent the service that's being provided. To date, IT's been paid for 100% by the general fund, but it's been supplied, that service has been supplied to all the funds. So the proposal is to proportion the cost, kind of like we do with Public Works, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, except we got a 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/10, 1/5, 1/10, as you can see laid out there. But what it does is it takes the existing IT department and it partitions the costs to other funds besides the general fund. This accomplishes a couple things. One, at the water pollution control plant, we bill based on our expenses, so we'll also get revenue from our major users for the portion of costs that are coded to the WPCP. And then in the sewer and water funds, those costs will now be supported by what have traditionally been non-tax-paying entities. So there's really a more equitable distribution of costs based on how the service is being received. So to date, those are kind of the advantages that it provides. But also in the future, there's been a lot of talk about consolidation, and we're going to try to pursue some, what I call reverse consolidation, for lack of a better term. Looking around for other agencies or government entities that might want to take advantage of some of the IT services that maybe we could provide and bill for if workload and time constraints allow. And then we're also collaborating with Clinton Community College in their new mechatronics program at the new building. Presently, we pay probably close to $50,000 a year for contracted instrument control services. We're going to be working with IT and with future employees that are presently in the mechatronics program at Clinton to develop our future candidate pool and hopefully get away from relying on an outside contractor there. So there's some present benefit, but also potential for future benefit. Down below, outlined how the costs would be partitioned across the different funds. This uses the 2017 general fund budget as the baseline. We've also done some baselines showing how this partitioning would occur versus what the mayor proposed for 2018 already. There's still a couple $100,000 a year savings by partitioning these different costs, even from his presently reduced budget. So we feel this is a more equitable way of allocating the costs, certainly gets the load off the general fund, and positions us to maximize the value and service that we get, and perhaps definitely provide some future efficiencies in how we operate, but maybe even with this reverse consolidation.
So, I mean, I appreciate the idea of the partitioning. I think that's a good idea. Who's doing the IT work, since we actually don't have a department?
It's proposed.
And how are we doing that?
Right now, the work's being done by the IT department
Right.
that's there. The proposal is to keep those positions intact and to incorporate them into the infrastructure division as far as functionality is concerned.
So they'll all be doing exactly the same thing that they have been doing? It's just budgeted differently?
It's budgeted differently. In theory, they could stay doing the same things that they're doing, but we also have plans for expanding their roles by using this collaboration and facilitator role that's provided for this.
And so, and this goes to the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, which is a complicated monster, trying to figure out what goes to where and who gets billed for what. And now it's an even more complicated monster because you got six different. So what's the oversight in that kind? I mean, like on a day-to-day basis, whether it's IT dealing with the elevator or dealing with the virus
Chargeback.
for, you know, who is keeping?
Yeah, when it comes to the operation of the unit and how the priorities are assigned and all that, it's going to stay the way it is. Brian, if he stays in that role, will continue to make that call. There will be an added layer, or maybe not layer, but an element with the facilitator that's working amongst the whole infrastructure unit, which is to make sure that the priorities that are being focused on, if it is an elevator, are in fact the ones that are at the top of the list.
So you're the facilitator?
Yes.
Well, you just should have said I.
For now.
You're so
I've been
humble.
pushing the mayor's envelope of patience lately. I think combative's been the term.
Well, I'm just still really curious because it has now become more complex in terms of billing.
When it comes to building the number that goes to Richard, yes, but at the end of the day, Rich is still going to get a regular payroll number for the water pollution control plan.
Right.
And in our worksheets, instead of having, I don't know, 16 or 17 of us in there, some of who are not petitioned 100%, there's going to be a few more people that are coded 20% or 10%.
Now, what's interesting to me is that the assumption here is that it's our public utilities that have them. This is 5 of our departments here are MLD and water and sewer, and only 10% to the general fund. However, if it is an elevator, is that general fund? If it's the clerk's office, that's general fund.
Correct.
If it's a counselor needs to change their password because they forgot it and they got locked out, that's general fund.
Yes.
So, I mean, to me, and again, I'm not the facilitator for this. This seems kind of, it's a worksheet.
Out of bounds?
We use coded.
I don't know.
Okay,
You use coded.
Timesheets. We have a code that for water,
Right.
code for sewer, code for general.
So
fund.
that's what they would be doing.
Then we can put the code number in when they work on
Yeah.
the general fund.
That's
or
what they would
water,
be doing.
sewer, wherever.
you could. That makes it cumbersome from this perspective. So this is a simple way of just saying, hey, this is approximately how we foresee the load in the future being. It may be more or less from one fund to another, but short of coding every single activity that occurs, billing it to a fund, and then what you get into is whether or not you have enough billable hours and how it's, people are going to be scrambling to do stuff in-house when maybe they shouldn't be and all that. So this is designed to avoid that cumbersomeness, if that's a word.
Okay, I look forward to a more detailed, less colored explanation of how this is going to work, because I'm not I'm not making the connection on your very specific percentages billed to these departments matched up with the services that IT provides. And I profess that I admit that I'm ignorant as to everything that they do, but since this is a budget issue, you know.
So you're
Thank
just
you.
asking for more concrete information
Eventually.
about, that would support a 10% allocation
Right,
from the general
right.
fund?
And MLD needs 20%.
Right.
Right.
And that's probably needs to get unfolded.
And just,
also use the word IT provides. Part of his model, if he just told me this is just a shell game, we're going to move who pays for what around a little bit, and I would have offered him a lot of resistance, but he's anticipating that IT will actually do more than they currently do, and primarily for these groups in that infrastructure division. He anticipates that this group can give him much more support on instrumentation down at the water pollution and water plants, something that we currently contract out of. We're planning to put some of the people in that IT department or IT unit in to give them some additional courses at Clinton Community College to give them some expertise that can leverage their skills even better for the cities. So we're anticipating that they're going to expand their duties more in line with these infrastructure units than they currently are, which is why we believe it makes sense to also have them be paid more from these units in the future.
So you're expanding responsibilities, and you're even considering outsourcing them eventually.
Potentially. If we can create some efficiencies within the department and that there's time available to do that, yes. If there's not time available to contract out, then that wouldn't be an option. So that's something that's in the development stage still. But if you're asking whether there's data to support these distributions, I don't know that the work that's been performed to date in IT would provide that level of data. If you're
you were making estimates.
Yes. If you're suggesting that maybe we should collect that data in the future and bill based on the hours or the actual work or revise all these things, we could talk about that, but then it becomes a much more cumbersome data collection exercise. To me, that wouldn't provide all that much benefit.
Well, I beg to differ on that. I mean, whether you're taking money from the ratepayers from these funds, or you're taking them from the taxpayers out of the general fund, I think that there needs to be at least a certain level. I mean, perhaps not 100% clarity, but some amount of clarity.
It's got to pass a straight-face test.
Yeah.
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah, because, I mean, as the facilitator, you don't want to be in the position of somebody saying, John Ruff just made those numbers up.
They are estimates, so somebody
but you
could,
did make
somebody
them up.
could,
I have a question, John. Does the IT department currently have a ticket, like a help desk ticket system?
My understanding is that they do.
I'm getting some head nods over here. It would be very easy when each of those tickets is entered to enter the department that it's being done for. And then in, a few months, you would know where they spending their time.
Right.
And I would think that would be a time when the council and Mr. Marks and the mayor and yourself would sit down and say, well, these need to be jiggered a little bit.
Sure.
And so that's an easy thing to collect, but we don't have that data now. So I would say that this is a good starting point. And I would also say that we always have discussions about how can the general fund be relieved by some of these other departments that are more flush. And this is a perfect example, I think, of that. You've actually taken the bull by the horn, so to speak, and said, yes, we can expand some of the funding that takes place in the general fund, and we can move it to some other funds that, and it's perfectly legitimate to do that. In fact, I don't think we do enough of it.
Well,
I think we should be examining that each and every year to see if there are additional opportunities. And I think we've done more of that this year, thinking about some of Mr. Mark's efforts when I say that. But I really like this, and I think it's a great starting place. You know, we should definitely, as a council, revisit this in 6 months or.
As I said when I started, I think it's good to look at the allocation so that we're not draining the general fund completely. But I'm also gonna be the gadfly here and say the city has a history of having rated those funds that were not part of the general fund. And I don't want to be part of that history again. I don't want to repeat it. So just as I, said to the police chief, let's be cautious about asset seizure,
I hear
the same way.
I agree with both of you. It's a great starting point. It certainly can be refined. And if there's a more equitable or fair way to approach it, then we should.
But do you feel satisfied that your estimates are based on, available evidence?
There really isn't this data set that I think we'd like to have. It's a start that looks at the fact that there's 5 or 6 different places this could get coded and kind of distributes it somewhat equally with a little more sensitivity to the general fund and maybe to some of the other funds.
Okay.
Okay.
What? Go ahead.
Just a question. An earlier reference to non-paying entities, is that non-tax-paying entities?
Yes.
The Plattsburgh State, the SUNY contribution to us is $250,000, is it?
On the water side, I think it's close to that. On the sewer side, it's only about $100,000.
Okay. Does that get affected now that we're going to this?
The anticipation is yes, because this revenue that gets redistributed to other funds, we're going to have to generate. And the anticipations will do that through some kind of impact fee that's similar to the infrastructure investment charge. Excuse me. So that would, if we use that same model, it would be done based on the size of somebody's water service.
Which reminds me, the water fund needs looking after.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
And you were going to bring us a proposal for rate increase for the water fund. Because if that's now 10% is coming from the water fund, we're looking at another fund that is being drained.
Ha! Good one, Becky.
Oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Sorry, I was slow in the uptake. Drain on the water fund. How do we reference it on the sewer fund?
Flushed.
Hey.
One is flush.
Flush and drain.
When you brought this idea to me in the first place, it was because I said, is there any other ways we could look at our IT needs? And we kind of realized that there's about 60% of the users that are very basic users, don't demand much on the system. But you'd expressed a really strong concern that some of the more technical units need that higher capacity. So I said, well, why would the general fund pay for that really high specialized capacity that only certain units, especially in the infrastructure division, really need that extra capacity, the extra bells and whistles, the servers, the more bandwidth, the bigger file sizes they exchange. And that's why you propose moving IT over there, because not only, they may not have more than their fair share of trouble tickets, but we're having to build up a more elaborate system to take care of their more specialized needs. So it's not just a trouble ticket issue, it's who demands the greatest capacity, and now we're aligning capacity.
Yeah, right, and it's a response too, and the ability to direct and control that response. And there's been discussion about consolidation, there's been discussion about contracting it out. I spent a lot of time talking with the mayor and eventually understood that if we did a consolidation with another agency or contract it out, we have very specific needs at our facilities that require different types of response and level of support that a typical PC user would, or an elevator or something like that. So if IT went away, we'd be in a position of going out and needing to hire something in-house for ourselves anyway. So we're kind of looking at that balance too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Anybody else?
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, John. All right, I guess we're up to page 12 here. Recreation Administration, I think.
That would fall under the community development now.
It is.
So.
And DPW.
I guess I have a couple of questions under Recreation Administration, 1100 and 1,200.
Can we, but Peter, I mean, put those questions out there, but knowing that we're gonna discuss the whole ball of wax
When
next
Paul comes
week.
back, right?
Okay. Go ahead and ask, Peter.
Well, I'm just looking at regular pay, and 2017, we have a revised budget of 160,000. Okay, I'm sorry, I take that back, I misread the column. I apologize.
That's a take back?
That's a take back.
Okay.
Okay.
To be certain, the only changes we're recommending there is one director's salary, one assistant director's half-time salary. There's no other lines or programs affected in any way, although they are now petitioned to different departments.
Could you explain the increase, though, down on the bottom of the page, under Penfield Park for contracted services of 3,300 from the 500? $500 or 500% increase.
Individual purchase items in the recreation administration have been allocated to the parks. Because the information I got was that those, for some reason, couldn't be charged directly to any park, but they were in support of all the parks. So that was allocated to the parks.
Do we have a motion to send out for pizza?
Always.
A question about the parks, is that now going to be administered by DPW?
Yes.
Okay.
Not the programs in the parks, but
Right.
the actual maintenance.
The
and grounds.
maintenance of buildings and grounds.
With precisely the same people that are doing it now, just under different supervision lines.
You did this at one time.
Purchases and contracts.
Your department did this at one time, didn't you know?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember
They've been allocated to
that.
the parks.
You're comfortable with
So
doing
they're
it again?
partitioned off to the different parks.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
His previous capacity was larger, though. He did programs as well as
Right.
grounds.
Right.
We're just, we'll only be doing the grounds and parks part of it,
Right.
not any of the
Been out
programs.
to the Great Center with it?
Yeah, they've already beautified.
Step up to the crate, walk around the building. We've done some work there.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
good to know. All right. Next item is,
City historian.
city historian. We are not going to have a city historian going forward.
Currently, we don't right now, and I don't propose to renew it.
Okay.
That's something we do work in collaboration with the county already, though, on this.
Okay.
They have a county historian.
They have a county,
We're working
okay.
with her.
Now, does that meet the requirement then to have a historian? Is there a requirement?
I thought there was a requirement to have a city historian.
That was a state requirement.
State law or?
How do you know that?
That was too.
Kentucky.
Well, I'm willing to nominally assume that duty, working with the county historian, if that would satisfy the state.
I wonder what I mean, it'd be interesting to know exactly the requirements.
Requirements
Yeah.
Okay. Celebration.
Well, that will be
Oh, that'll
encompassed
be-
in the proposal Paul sent me.
Better warn Paul, we're gonna bombard him next week.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Celebrations, Battle of Plattsburgh, so that's all CDO. Waste collection. Anybody have any questions for DPW on waste collection?
See a significant increase in pay, regular pay.
What?
There's a significant increase in regular pay from the 2017 of 47,000 to
Are you looking at
2018 parks. Waste co- oh, I'm sorry, again, wow, okay,
That's zoning, I think, you're looking at.
yeah.
A roughly 5% increase in expenses, and I just want to flip over to page 2 and see what you got for revenue.
What said a 5% increase in expenses?
Decrease.
Decrease.
Oh, okay.
I thought you said increase,
I thought so
too.
too, but I knew it was.
Well, maybe I
decrease.
did. We'll replay the tape later. Let's see.
I think our budget's at 498, and taking 723. Start with Richard.
Michael, where is your revenue for
Page 2.
waste collection? Page 2.
Community service.
For some reason, I could, okay,
So-
refuse, okay. So you're down a little bit there too. What you budget, 700,000.
0.6.
Revenues are revenue.
Revenues are revenue.
It's ratepayer, paid by the consumer.
You don't anticipate a change?
Well, we'd like to have more customers.
Yeah.
Well,
We have no control over that.
well, you're dropping off your 0.8 next year's.
That's something we put out.
We didn't,
Where? Right there?
Yes.
Okay. That's just, how do we arrive at that number?
Take a look at 2016.
Okay.
Okay. Close enough.
The customer base has been dwindling.
Right.
Not dramatically, it goes down every year.
How do our rates compare to Casella?
Better.
we're better.
Better.
I agree we're better, but one of the comments that I hear quite often is about the recycling and the limited recycling.
Talk about this all the time.
Every year, yeah.
About the limited recycling.
It's inconvenient for people to put recyclables in bins.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. If we could be probably competitive, with customers if we had zero source
Zero
access.
source.
We could we'd have to switch equipment and change some things up, but because we're not
Allowed.
to use it.
Casella says no because they won't take
Won't
the
take-
or the one sort.
Right.
I think it's cost us around 600 customers, if they start zero sort.
And I believe that in the past, you have said that you have your suspicions as to the efficacy of their zero sort blowing system, as to whether it in fact actually does what it says it's gonna do. Whereas when you hand sort into a bin, you know that's going into those.
We get to dump the bin in certain
Yeah.
locations.
And
They won't take the city refuse and zero sort it for us. They say it's too much capacity for them.
That's correct.
Oh, they truck it all over Vermont to do it.
Yes.
In the first place.
Well, and they don't have the capacity, but they would love to have more of our customers.
Of course. They could zero sort all the customers.
And our pickup of lawn debris, leaves, grass, how much of a challenge is that? Or is it a drain, a challenge? What would you call it?
Another month from now, it's gonna be really a challenge.
Every free body will be on it.
Everybody will be on it.
You know, I heard of one residence that had over 100 bags of leaves out front. But, so if you got 1 bag or 100 bags, you're all,
And-
Take care of it.
Well, I mean, and I love the fact that you're bringing that up. So how is it that we take on that responsibility? What's the history of that?
The city has a lot of trees that we own.
Yes.
It's hard to differentiate whose leaves.
Okay. Okay, got it.
It's like DNA testing for dog
Yeah.
poop.
there is an idea.
Walter Shimura's
DNA
idea.
test for the
Yes.
leaves. Just a little scanner, nope,
And then
sorry.
also, we've discussed as time goes on in the season, if somebody's raked to the curb, we'll go clean it up because it's gotta get cleaned up to keep things
The
moving.
drain, yeah.
That's correct. Traffic.
But is there any way, I mean, there is some policy, correct, if I'm wrong, about raking into the road?
Yes.
Yes.
Like-
Is there any way, and I guess this would be for
Oh,
you as
yeah.
well, chief, about enforcing it in that if it's raked in the road and we have to pick it up,
They
they
have
get
to
charged
pay,
or
yeah.
fined?
How is that addressed? Where is it?
I don't think
It's like charging per square foot to remove snow if people don't do it, right? Or, you
I
know.
think the practice is so ingrained of people doing that, although the code says that you can't put anything in the road.
We have our sweepers, we go by, clean it up. Done.
But is there any way of, if, I know I walk through my ward sometimes, and there are a lot of culprits in my ward, and, I get disgusted by it too, but, you make them pay once or twice, they
Well,
may
it
change
would
their
have to go
habits.
through the building inspector's
We
office
can't do
then,
it with the
right?
snow, we can't do
Yeah.
it with
And
the
I don't do
leaves.
the leaves. I'd rather just clean it up, keep the city clean.
That's the service, and thank you
That's
for it.
correct.
Wouldn't most of those customers, regular leaves, be seller customers?
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
There's also the dynamic, and say they bag all the leaves, and Peter's been up to our landfill, and we have thousands and thousands of bags that we have to open and dump. So is it
Yeah.
easier to sweep them with a sweeper?
True
Or
enough.
hand pick them?
Can't pick the bags.
Save
Open
the word,
bags.
I won't buy bags anymore then.
Yeah, right.
But if that person with 100
That
bags,
is a quandary we have here with this, there's no easy solution to
do
it.
you sweep them or vacuum them?
Depending on
Right.
the size of it, but most of the time
Right.
it's a sweeper, but if people put branches in, then it kind of cuts down the fun.
Got a rough place.
Next is Parks and Beautification. That is now in DPW's budget.
No, we've always had parks.
You've always had parks and, well, it just makes a lot of sense to have that all in
You'll
one
see
department.
a big reduction there because we were told to put the tree house and the Riverwalk line items in our budget, and we don't actually have anything to do with those items. They're just put in our budget as line items. So if you can see the tree house was 10,930,
Right,
and we removed that.
right.
And there's been no maintenance, the treehouse actually is held up
Really well.
Yeah, really well.
Yeah.
But, you inspect it, yeah,
Yes, we do check it, but
Yeah.
it's, there's been no vandalism
yeah.
and there's been no wear and tear.
And let me ask as well, once the improvement is made that's underway at the base, the old base marina, is that gonna be an increase of work for you? Will there be more? Because I think the building is coming down, is it not, at the base of the hill? I didn't know how that's gonna get developed.
You mean on Oklahoma?
Yeah, it's closed off now and the
It's
bridge.
primarily a slope stabilization.
Yes.
Right.
Counselor. People use it.
Yes, it's
We
heavily.
sign it up and to try to discourage people because it is a kind of safety, it is fenced off. and people still go out there. We still maintain it, we go over and mow, we pick up the garbage on a regular basis, so I don't.
And the gazebo area, you maintain that as well? Okay. So there's no anticipated additional, once that's completed? You're not gonna plow the snow, so you go ice fishing over there or something like that? Okay, good for you. All right.
Next is retirement. Looks like, for the most part, those funds are either staying the same or going down.
Those are based on the projections that New York State provides. The 1,470,000 is exactly the same number as the projection was for 2017. I've just received new numbers today for the 2018 projection. They're not much different.
Okay.
The net change for the general fund would be $1,180 less, so I'm not gonna change that, I'm leaving it alone.
Okay.
The new rates have gone down a little, like 0.1% here and there. There's not a dramatic change between 2017 rates and 2018. I sent them all to you today. I think you might see them. If you compare them, you see there's not a big change. The only thing that's changed is the projection of the employee retirement plan wages is dramatically higher, but I think the state's putting too high an increase factor in that based on where we're gonna be with our payroll next year.
I'll ask on the unemployment insurance. Well, I'm looking at 16 and 17 was 18.5. The actual now is 1,400. but the projection remains 18.5, and the budget is 3,000.
We keep asking about the projection numbers. I haven't had a chance to go back and look at all 866 of them.
Okay, all right,
When I get a chance to do that, I will.
okay.
Health insurance is a big issue, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that at least a little bit. Any news or updates on health insurance?
We visited with our advisor, First Niagara Key Bank today, and they came in with a lot of suggestions that we'll consider for next year as well, that we'll begin working on. They recommended that we put in even an additional amount for healthcare costs for next year than we budgeted. But they also believe we may have an offset to that, having to do with a settlement that we may be able to use as well. So in net, it's about what we budgeted for, and we're keeping our fingers crossed for that. We should have more information and precision probably in the next, about a week's time.
Okay. Will this number change, you think, or?
Yeah, it will go up, but then we'll also have an offset.
You'll have, okay, so it's a wash and, okay.
Yeah, within a few thousand, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on the general fund tonight, ladies and gentlemen? I think that just about does it for the general.
Yeah.
Could we ask Rich to kind of summarize some of the recommendations that I provided to you?
Yes,
He's been
absolutely.
doing some analysis on that.
Absolutely.
I emailed the list, I believe it was yesterday, and the summary.
Rich, would you mind coming up here to speak to us?
The summary for the general fund changes was a $50,000 reduction in revenue because we changed the sales tax projection by $50,000, and Greg Bell reaffirmed that that $50,000 addition isn't going to materialize. So we should take that out. That was one of the items that's to the detriment of additional surplus. Now, what we did across the board was say we're going to look at 5% purchase cost reductions. So I took all the purchase accounts, equipment, contract services, supplies across the board in the general fund. 5% across the general fund is $170,000 reduction. That's anticipated to ask everybody to cut their purchases either by price benefits, price decreases, driving better prices with the vendors, or just reduce their purchases.
We're hoping to do that with more centralized procurement, more working with state or with county bulk pricing, that sort of thing. We're actually hoping to not have to do with actual cutbacks in the items purchased.
The next item.
I'm sorry, how about with the school district too for next year?
The next item was an IT cost allocation from the general fund, which amounted to $216,000. That's based on what John just presented, reducing what we have in the general fund right now by 90%. That's going to stand the test of more analysis. Reduction of one police car. I put in there $33,113. However, I didn't have what the IT costs for that car would be, so I'll have to find that out from the chief or Heather. But those reductions amounted to about $420,000, and net of the reduction in sales tax, it was about a $370,000 addition to the surplus projected for 2018, taking us up to $680,000 surplus projection.
For 2018?
For 2018.
And
with the 2.5%,
pardon me?
that's factoring a 2.5% increase?
What
Tax
2.5%
increase?
increase?
With these figures are based on a 2.5% tax increase?
No, that was based on still the 2.85%, so that would require a further reduction in his figures of about 35,000.
I haven't even looked at how these change. I'm just doing item by item.
So, I guess if you take $370,000, well, you're saying to change the tax levy. You would have to change the tax levy by $370,000 to have an impact. And I don't think it was planned to change the tax levy.
Your proposal was at, or the mayor's budget was at 2.85%?
The levy increase 4.74, the rate increase 2.85.
Correct, and Councilor Ensel is saying what would be required to get it down to about 2.5%? That'd be about 0.35% reduction, which would equal about a $35,000 further economizing of savings, or bring your surplus down by another $35,000, I think is what you're saying.
Right.
And you're just talking about the rate.
Just the rate, right below.
Correct. Now, when you said it would bring the surplus up to $600,000.
680.
And you found, you total up another $370,000 of savings, including Mr. Ruff's savings. That was then assuming a basis for the fund balance of about $200,000 or so roughly, or just asking how you got to the, just so we all understand how we got to that fund balance, because we're trying to meet your goal of a fund balance of about $550,000, which is about 2.5% fund balance. So I just wanted to make sure we're kind of roughly in the all ballpark.
Based on the mayor's budget that was released on August 16th, there was going to be a $64,000 deficit at the end of 2018. So this would make it about $620,000 surplus.
But weren't you saying it was a $370,000 improvement? I'm trying to figure out the difference.
Well, it's the items I just covered. 5% purchases is 170, IT cost reduction 216, purchase of police car reduction 33. That's a $420,000 reduction net of a $50,000 loss in sales tax revenue. $370,000.
So it's a $370,000 change from my budget.
Right.
So wouldn't that translate from, if we had a budget deficit of about -60, wouldn't that bring that up by 370 to a plus 310 surplus?
Right.
So I'm wondering about that $600,000 surplus that you mentioned.
There's not going to be. No, it's just going to be the difference between the additional $370,000 and the $64,000 we're projecting with your budget to be in the hole.
So I think it means we need to continue looking for about another $250,000 if we want to meet the $550,000 goal. I just want to make sure our math is all about the same.
Right.
There were some other items we were talking about. If we don't finance Main Road
Right, okay.
in the debt service, that's going to save the general fund $228,000 just in 2018.
Right, I mean, and are we on schedule to talk about the capital project plan next week?
We can, but this, let's talk about this a little bit so everybody can think about it. As you know, we'll be going out for a bond issue in November. That's related to the Moody's discussion in September, so they can give us the rating for that bond issue. One of the big items in that bond issue from the general fund is the main road improvements. Now it appears from the recent RFP and the engineering timeline that work would actually not be done substantially until next year.
Correct.
So one thing that Rich included in his email to you was, what if we didn't bond that project in November, but instead issued a bond next year when we actually needed the money? And based on that calculation, it could reduce the general fund obligation by
$229,000.
$229,000, which then makes up that difference and gets you about to that $550,000.
But it keeps the 2.85% tax increase intact.
Well, we'd have to do the math precisely, but at least we're in the ballpark. And remember, 2.5 to 2.5 is about a $35,000 difference.
We were hoping to maybe get that down to 2.5 if.
That's once again the rate change, tax rate change.
Right.
Yes.
But it's the tax levy we're going to look at.
So I think with Rich's idea with delaying the bond and instead doing a ban for Main Road next year, if you take the surplus of about, fund balance surplus about 310, you add in the 220 for the bond issue.
229.
So now you're up to
539.
540. If you then took back the 35,000 for Council Ansell's goal of getting to 2.5%, you're approximately, we need to confirm that, up to a fund balance of 505, which is pretty close to where you're trying to get it to.
Yeah, the tax cap is 2.85 according to the state calculation right now. It's 1.84 for growth and the balance for inflation.
So
the cap is 2.85 allowance.
They'll allow
We're at
2.85?
Yep,
cap for next
I sent
year?
that to you last week.
yeah, I remember seeing that, Rich.
Yeah.
It's good to hear you confirm that.
Yep.
So we could come in at 2.85.
Now
And-
that's the levy. The levy we currently are projecting on page 3 that you're looking at is way to the right, is 4.74.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you gotta reduce that by about 2% to get down to 285.
Because of the levy that determines.
200,000.
The levy is what
Yeah,
determines
I know.
whether you're gonna vote to exceed the tax cap.
Right, increasing taxes, right. It's not the tax rate.
It's not the
tax
rate.
Right.
When I say we, I guess the only person I really talked to about is Peter, but we feel as though 2.5 would be more attractive for the tax rate than 2.85. We'd like to try to achieve that.
So that means we'd reduce the levy by a commensurate amount to bring it down.
Well, there are some variables too that we need to consider as we review the budget for next time around.
Well,
And the,
I think Colin just said too, if we take the 540 surplus that we're looking at next year, reduce that down to 505, that's still pretty healthy fund balance for our first year. And then we could deliver to the taxpayers a 2.5% increase. That's what I would like to see.
I could support that.
What do you guys, what do you all think about that?
We haven't taken into account that part-time, my secretary goes at 60,000, 30. So that's a $30,000 savings that you're not seeing.
Well, actually, it's more because with their benefits, the 60 would have been 80, about 80, 85 to 30, so.
The only benefit you're gonna save is the retirement. You still have the person's health care, so you won't change anything there, because she's retired. You'll still have FICA, because you're paying her. It'll just be, less FICA because it's half pay. So that's the only savings you're gonna see in the benefits.
Okay, so it'd be about $35,000 savings, which is the 35,000 you were just looking for a moment ago.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have much of a list for amendments yet. I only have 3 things on it.
And what are they?
Recommendation to reduce $9,075 of counselor pay. Leave in the cost reduction for the rent on the finance office because we're gonna move. And then just now tonight was the discussion about the police car.
If this is an appropriate time, I'd like to make a comment on reducing the counselor pay. It may seem counterintuitive to the public that, I might offer an argument for not reducing the pay. On the one hand, I think that if counselor pay is reduced, then the mayor's pay should be reduced. However, I believe that neither pay should be reduced, and this is my rationale. I think that we can all afford to have our pay reduced. I do believe that. In fact, in some sense, it actually might help me in terms of my taxes. But I believe that we are the lowest paid council in the area. Town of Plattsburgh, I believe they make $12,000. And something I want to say about pay is when you give it up, you never get it back. And I'm not thinking of myself here, I'm thinking of the future. And I think about this in terms of let me start with the mayor's salary. We have a mayor's salary that I don't think is commensurate with the job. I don't. And I think that the salary that we have makes it so that the people who run for office tend to be retired people who are fairly well off, or people who are fairly well off. And we don't get mid-level young professionals who would be willing to give up their careers in order to do that. And so we create a kind of a vacuum, and I'll translate that to the counselor status too. By reducing the pay, and I know people say that public service is something you do voluntarily. It's true, we do that, and I certainly did not run for office because I was going to get $9,999 a year after taxes, whatever that is, and whatever it did to my tax return. But it's not free. Service is not free. You have to run for office, and you have to pay to run for office. And so it depends on who you're competitive with. You have to put yourself out there, and you have to spend money on it. It's an expensive prospect. You take time. We take time out of our lives to do this. It's not just an hour a week. And Richard, when I first was elected, I had to keep a tally of my hours, and I can't remember what the average was, but it went from 8 hours to 16 hours a week. That's a significant amount of time. Now, and the reason I say this is it's not for myself. I know it sounds selfish, but if we lower the salary, then we're kind of treating the council as the gentlemen public servants who have enough money and enough leisure time to run for office and be public servants. And that to me is a form of elitism. We should be encouraging people who don't have that much, as much money and as security as we do. And you know, with all respect, there are several retired persons on the council. We need young people to run. We need people who come from different economic classes to offer their insights, who might be willing to do that, but to look at it and say, you know, is there any compensation for this kind of service? So I think that in terms of the future, I don't know when the salary was set. I have no idea. But it's very hard to vote for a pay increase, obviously. And in tough economic times, the tendency is to say, yes, we will sacrifice. Personally, yes, I would personally sacrifice. But I don't think it's the right move for the future and for what we're crafting for a council, the constitution of a council, or the mayor's office. So if everybody decides that you all agree that you want to do that, fine. But I think in principle, you also get what you pay for. And there is a sense that, you know, a community needs to invest. We're not slackers. We do the job. We come, we work, and I think a lot of people actually don't understand the work that goes into being a counselor outside of showing up to meetings. The time on the phone, the time with emails, the meeting with people and always being receptive to people. And it is worthy of a community to invest in that kind of compensation. But most of all, I am concerned that we are downgrading the value of serving, and we're just creating a situation where only people of means will run for council. So that would be I just want to be on record. And
yeah, you know, thank you for that. Thank you. You got us on a timer? I hope.
Apparently not. Because you're going to open the window and throw it.
That's his billable hours meter going on.
Boy. I don't know. I brought this up because I figured we've hit every single department in the city and asked them to sacrifice. And I'm willing to sacrifice too. I will say this though. I first served on the council in 2008, I believe was the first year I did it. And the pay then was $10,000 a year, so we haven't gotten a raise in 9 years.
I'm curious as to when that was set.
So we've actually taken a pay cut.
I'd have to look, but it hasn't been changed.
When I started covering the council in 1986, it was $8,000.
Well, there.
So, really, haven't kept up with the cost of living, have we?
So on the one hand, I figure, okay, we can do our part too. You know, we can take a pay cut, it ain't gonna kill us.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a
not
fine
gonna kill
gesture.
the budget if we don't take a pay cut.
Right, I mean,
So-
I appreciate the idea that we, as a gesture for economy and so forth. But I also really appreciate the way in which Councilor Casper has outlined not only the nature of our service, but the value of our service, and how what kind of symbolism the reduction in pay, communicates to the public about what we do. So I've certainly not, I'm kind of undecided at this point, but I have to say that what you say, Becky, really resonates.
Would it make sense if, as a counselor, or individual counselor, if they so wish, give back to the city to write a check or something along those
I was
lines?
just gonna say that there is a history of
giving
back. Jim Cownon used to give $500 a month to any kind of charity or nonprofits, and I personally have spent probably close to $3,000 in my time as counselor on beautification for the city. And I know, Mike, you gave money to the Saratoga, and so did you, Rochelle.
Yeah, Mayor Calman took his whole year contribution of $6,000 and put it towards the Saratoga.
Towards the Saratoga, yeah. So that may not be very public, but we do give back, and I think that's a good thing to do.
But most importantly, I think it's the public may not understand the degree to which we spend time. It is, as you said, we appear here every week, but there's much more that goes on behind the scenes.
And the engagement of young people.
That's another point that's important to make.
If you make it a contribution, tax write-off.
Something to think about.
No.
Thank you for guaranteeing my audit this year.
Well, that's an
Good discussion, though. I appreciate it, really.
Okay, so I guess the bottom line is here, we could get our 2.5% tax increase, and we could end up with a $500,000 fund balance next year. Does that sound palatable to you guys?
I would just like to go back and ask a question on the 5% cut with the expectation of hundreds. What is that again now? I mean, is it on top of?
The sales tax, you mean?
It's on top of everything that's in the budget already. There is, I think it's $3.4 million worth of purchase expenses in the general fund. When you look at all the accounts for equipment purchases, supplies, contract services, everything across the board.
Oh, that he's asking everybody to make, okay.
5% reduction of all of that is $171,000.
So if we hadn't seen some of the reductions we've seen, just, we'll use tonight as an example, how much would we be asking then, I wonder? Because some others have cut expenses, contract services, et cetera. If they hadn't come forward with what we've seen, what would we be asking then? Not 5, we'd be asking 10, 15% cuts.
Well, yeah, I mean, and are you getting at, let me try to extract your point here. So you're saying that some people have come forward with more cuts than others,
I think
so is it fair?
All have. Well, I'm not gonna pick one over the other, but it seems everyone has, maybe some closer to the bone than others. So now we're asking for another 5. Is there thoughts that they didn't cut as close as they could, thinking they'd be asked for a further reduction, so now we are asking for that reduction?
Yeah, and also in anticipation of driving better prices from vendors, doing better with procurement, maybe buying fuel within the county's purchasing option. Consolidating our paper purchases through the county.
But that's part of the the
That's
thought
what
behind
Then
that
we follow the whole
5%.
thought process of the 5%.
It's not all
savings.
back to the departments to.
No,
Okay, as long as it's.
because some of it can't be
Equitable.
cut.
Mhm.
You know, some
Right.
of it you're stuck
Right.
with it. It's bare bones to begin with.
Yes, it is. 5% would go to,
Like I already did to Scott, I took 12 grand away from him, so now he's gotta find that somewhere. I did the same thing to myself. I forgot to put in 3,000 for office supplies, so now I gotta find that. I'm not gonna change it. I'll figure out how to cut something else.
and this would eliminate any possible personnel cuts if you asked for 5%, 10%. The way you're asking, it goes to
This is the goal
tangibles.
of doing this, yes.
Right.
Is to say that we're not gonna start to, you know, reduce headcount, because then you've got the problem with reducing all the temporaries first.
Right.
Which is a massive problem for not only public works, but, you know, the recreation issues, and actually all of the separate funds where they have temporary employees for the summer. That becomes a big nightmare.
Okay, I just wanted some clarity on that 5% and where it's at.
Okay, Mayor Reed delivered us a budget that included a 2.85% tax increase. And we and department heads and the mayor and Richard have come up with some additional cuts that total $310,000, plus we're expecting a $229,000 savings from the IT consolidation that John told us about tonight, for a total of.
Plus an additional 35 for secretary.
Plus an addition, so.
Right.
The IT reduction's already in the numbers. I was quoting about the 370,000.
The second one was the fund balance, or the bond issue, moving
Yes.
to a ban.
The
Oh,
229
the
was
ban,
main road.
the main road
Right.
saved us $229,000, right?
Well, yeah, the ideal objective of that is if you don't borrow the money in November, ahead of when you're actually gonna start to spend it. The point of borrowing it this November was we had anticipated spending it already. In fact, half of it by the end of this year.
Right.
So if we don't borrow that until next year, at the end of the year with a ban, to replace the surplus that we're using in cash currently, then we won't have any debt service on that until 2019, when you have to pay a ban principal and interest payment on it. So it just defers it, but it also matches when you need it. Well, why borrow it ahead of time and have it sit in the bank and only earn, you know, nominal interest rate when you're paying maybe 3% against it?
Okay.
So that's the 229 savings
Okay.
against the debt service total that we'd have
Okay.
for the general fund next year.
So altogether, that's $539,000. We, the council would like to see a 2.5% tax rate and create a fund balance of $505,000 at least for 2018. Is that doable?
It seems that these
Is
numbers
that-
support that.
I'm sorry, Richard, what was that?
It seems that these numbers support that.
Yes.
But of course, we have to, you know, we have to get the drivers behind what we're doing here and make it work.
Yes. I think the taxpayers would be very happy to know that we found an additional 0.35 in savings against a budget that was already quite austere.
Well, if you roughly believe this is where you want to go, we could instruct Richard to then do a tentative council budget and, you know, work on these numbers and see where everything comes out and be
I'll
able to
put
more
together a
precise,
list
but-
of potential council amendments. I'm not gonna
Right.
change any numbers in the system until you guys approve them.
Right.
Because I don't wanna be in there, add, subtract,
Yeah,
and, you
yeah.
know, play games with different projections.
Okay.
It just gets too confusing.
Okay.
Not only for anybody who reads it and says, hey, this changed, you know, since last week, but for me too, to keep track of it. So I just wanna do a comprehensive list of where we think we're gonna go with changes at this point.
Okay, let's just talk a few minutes about timing here. I'd like to see us pass a budget on September 14th so that the mayor can go visit Moody's rating service the next day and make a very strong case for the fiscal health of the city of Plattsburgh and hopefully reduce our our bond rate?
Well, to be honest, the best I hope for is keep the bond rating where it is. If we could actually improve our bond rating, that would be a
Miracle.
grand slam home run.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if we would keep it where it is, I think it'd be a big success, given
Okay.
what we've heard, so.
So if we can pass a budget on September 14th, it would make a strong case for the future of our city. And the question is, we're going to exceed the tax cap, so we have to have a public hearing for that. We're going to have budget resolutions we have to vote on before you actually know, what the budget's going to be for 2018.
Yep.
So can we get all that done by the 14th?
I'll get a list of these changes to you right away.
Okay.
If not tomorrow, then, Monday or Tuesday, or Monday's a holiday?
Mhm.
Tuesday.
Could we vote on those? Could we vote on those next week?
If you can get them to us.
Yeah, do you want them individually, or
I
do you
mean, we
want them
haven't
as a
heard
group?
from community development yet, though.
Yeah,
That's the
right.
problem.
We
Right.
will.
All right.
We will.
Well, that would be in addition to anything we're doing here.
That's right.
Because we're not talking anything in these changes about community
That's true.
development.
Right,
Okay.
if you can send us the amendments that you have taken note of, then we can make a decision as to an agreement on them, and we can hear from community development. And then if we agree to however many or all of them, then we can take them as a group in the resolution.
Or I could set them up for you like I did last year, where each
Yeah.
one was an individual
Yeah.
calculation with a footnote that says, here's what you're
Okay,
doing.
yep, I totally remember, yep,
Because then you can look at them individually.
yep,
So it's not like an omnibus package.
Yep.
Your impact.
yep.
And each of those is a resolution, and each of those is voted on by us?
Well, I mean, it's just the list. You could say you're gonna put them all together.
We can
Okay.
use that as a place, a holder for discussion, and then if we agree that we're gonna go with all of them, then with the resolution, they can be bundled as one resolution.
So then is it possible, if we pass our budget resolutions next week, is it then possible on the 14th to have the hearing and vote on the budget?
Yeah, the numbers are easy to change at that point if I know exactly what we're changing and, get a report to everybody.
So you would have the resolutions that you're going to send us individually, and you potentially would have another resolution based on the conversation with community development.
Something could come out of that for sure. Can we vote,
And
we'd have to,
the additional change that Scott was talking about that's not in the mayor's budget for the halftime clerical support.
right.
That's 35 plus or minus. We have to
Would
put
that be a
in.
budget resolution also?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be, because the numbers right now have that person in a full-time, full benefit.
So the only question mark is, community development. How do we take any changes that might occur from the discussion about community development and get those into the budget? Can we write resolutions on the fly?
We would have to do that, we would have to do that next Thursday, we would have to make a decision next Thursday, that we were in agreement about a resolution for whatever it regarded with community development.
Thursday night doesn't end till midnight, so
Yeah,
sit here and grind the numbers out.
Okay.
It'd be simple enough to do that.
right, but the final doesn't have to be till the 14th, so you actually have more time than you're often given.
Sure.
Now,
Yeah.
now, I want the council and the mayor and the public and department heads to know that this is not the end of this discussion. If we vote for a budget on September 14th, we can have a budget discussion on September 21st if you choose.
Yeah.
The budget can be fluid and it can change.
For that matter, you can say that what we do on the 14th is a draft, and it's the best estimate projected draft that we have at this point in time, and it doesn't have to change, but it can.
But would the draft help the mayor's discussions
At
with?
that point, it would be the council's budget that's approved, and then if you want to do any changes, that's going to be budget amendments as you do on a regular basis anyway.
I don't know if we can amend the budget that's adopted in 2017,
In 2017.
or for 18 in 2017. We'd have to wait to amend it, I think, next year.
January.
Right.
But it wouldn't matter, right? Because we're not actually
Because we're not
spending from
acting
that
on
budget
the
until
budget
January
until
anyway.
2018.
That does not mean that we can't discuss the
Oh,
budget
sure.
each and every week, and we can make a list of things we'd like to change and do it on the first meeting in 2018 if we want to.
For that matter, you know, something could change in October, beginning in November, that says, hey, there's gonna be an extra $100,000 in revenue coming in, for whatever reason.
That'd be nice.
We'd have to change the budget for that.
Love your optimism, Richard.
Or not.
You know, it's, things can
Things
change.
happen.
I'm supposed to be researching something for Council Dowler that might make a difference there. I gotta find out an answer, and I've gotta call in from a state agency about another item that might make a big difference. So, there's things we're looking at.
Do tell.
It's a
Just kidding.
percentage. Okay.
Just kidding.
It's nothing official right now. I mean, we're
All
just,
right.
nothing to actually get excited about, but it has potential.
Thanks for everybody's work.
Thank you.
Do you want
I
to?
think the meeting is adjourned.
Hold on. Do you want to entertain any public
sorry.
comment?
Yes, I
Carol's
forgot
dying.
that part.
I know this has been really hard work and it's really painful for everybody. I know that, you know, Councilor Casper is right. I will be one of the first people to say that Joshua and everybody worked way outside the normal hours. But I do think that the public really appreciates the people I've spoken to, whether it be a token or not, rather than not take a pay cut. The other idea that came up, I think it's more significant, maybe do 10% and not 15%. And I do ask the mayor to consider maybe 10%. I know that everybody's salary has been frozen. I've been here for 2.5 hours and I have a business. I have to go till probably midnight to do what I gotta do tonight. But I think that all the departments have been asked to cut. I think it's important that the city residents know we're paying an increase in taxes. We know that that's the quality of life to live in Plattsburgh, and we're willing to do that to some degree. So I think that's important. I ask that the council really consider the animal control officer. I've called him, I've asked, but I think that we have to consider as a city, you know, the quality of life. We're putting money into parks and recreation and some other issues of quality in life. I think that the residents as a whole, in the past, we flip-flopped on whether we have an animal control officer, and I think this time, I think we need to cut that position. Whether we put that back later, I think the city needs to look at that.
We did that last year.
A couple years ago, we did that.
Yeah.
It was a disaster.
Well, then I
But-
ask, you know, disaster in what way?
And, well, we were overrun with skunks and groundhogs and
Raccoons.
raccoons.
And he developed a new.
We had to
strategy.
reinstate it in
Right.
2016.
And there was a new strategy developed on the trappings.
I've called on a couple times and he's not been able to service my needs, so I don't know to the extent of.
Because he was at
what-
Mike's house.
Call my wife.
Yeah.
She'll tell you how to
Well,
do it.
maybe we consider looking at that, maybe some cut in that, because I think that the residents, I think it is our job. I have apartments and I do what I can do to minimize that, and I think that there's way to prevent that as well. And I think a lot of college housing and other, areas of Plattsburgh where garbage is left out and not picked up, that attracts them. So I do ask the council to look at that. And the other thing is, I'm glad that the police department is willing to sacrifice one vehicle. I still ask that they might consider refurbishing or repairing the other vehicle, maybe cutting either a police officer or something. I think there's a way to cut a little bit more in the police department. But the other thing is the revenue. I'll ask to speak about that in a minute. I'll looking forward to see what the community development do, but it's 129.5% increase. And I know some of that is because of the recreation department that they've absorbed, the duties of that, but I'll look forward to see what that does. I think that the city should also look for revenue, so I think increasing fines across the board is important. Parking violations, noise ordinance complaints, the barbecue, you know, or the illegal burning, building, zoning, you know, building permits. I think that's another way to look at, although it might be minimal at first, I think that if we did an increase across the board, I think that would be helpful. I don't think we've increased many of those things in many, many years. And I do ask that there be a moratorium on any additional spending. Like when somebody comes in front of the council to ask, they want to do a walk, we have the recreation path and some other areas that we've done some fundraising, and maybe that's where we need to look more at about minimizing the costs that we need to for overtime or trafficking, you know, to control the traffic. And I know that there is going to be some other projects and multifamily being put on the tax roll, so that will definitely help, and we can't count on that. When Mike Kelly spoke about, you know, I agree with Mr. Kelly. If we have any surplus in any kind of funds going forward, I don't think we need to spend that. I think we need to look at being conservative and hold that, so that when we have unexpected repairs in city streets or water and sewer, because we're going to have a lot of I'm very worried. We have a lot of failing infrastructure that's on our way, and I think we're just pushing the ball down the road. I'm very concerned that we're going to get hit next year with some costs. And the last thing is, I agree with, you know, Mr. Marks about maybe we don't bond the main road this year. We bond it when we need to have it. The problem is the interest rates are going to go up. So I think the city needs to look at that. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Anyone else? Meeting adjourned.
There you are.
Yeah. Thanks for your guidance. I'm starving. Oh, nice.
Looking forward to that.
Sorry, guys.
No, take your time.
I don't think so.
To rescue, so that nobody gets hurt.
Well, you do.
Researching prices, because I didn't see 3 quotes.
I did two, under 5,000, there's two. And this is giving me a state contract price, if you flip to the back.
No, I see. Okay.
So I did 2 of them.
Okay, and this one was going on with this.
What's that?
What's going on with that one there?
Yeah. Yes, it'll take
This
it'll take him a few
PCR's
days
contracted
to
price.
do that.
It's from a contract.
But I'll get it to you just as soon as I can.
It's going away, it's outdated, so it's just replacing what we have now.
Is this something we need?
Oh, absolutely, that's how you do your electronic hospital care reports. It's
Is
something
that
we,
different from our building thing, because we're going to.
right, you have it's all electronic, and it sends everything electronically. It's what we've always done, it's just with a different company. That was it.
Great.
And like I said, I'm gonna try to keep those down. I mean, there's some things that I kinda have to get, like the hose, but as I told you, I'm gonna do it in 2 years instead of one big one.
That was helpful.
Well, hopefully I can keep the spending down, it'll give you a little more revenue.
Hey, just hold on just a second.
In order to make the rate go down, you have to make the levy